Sarah Henderson had always been invisible. At 63 years old, she worked as a night custodian at the Crawford County Historical Museum in rural Georgia. People walked past her every day without seeing her face. To them, she was just the old black woman who mopped the floors and emptied the trash. But Sarah saw everything. She had worked at the museum for 27 years. Every night she walked the same halls, dusted the same displays, and locked the same doors. The museum was small, barely funded, and rarely visited. Most exhibits showed the glory of the Old South, grand plantations, Confederate generals, and stories of white prosperity. There was never any mention of the people who built it all. One cold November night, Sarah was cleaning the basement storage room. This room was always locked during the day. Only the museum director, Mr. Richard Caldwell, had the key, but tonight he had left it in the lock by mistake. Sarah hesitated at the door. She had been told never to enter this room. Not once in 27 years had she been allowed inside, but something pulled at her heart, a feeling she couldn't explain. She turned the key and stepped inside. The room was filled with old boxes, forgotten artifacts, and dusty files. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The air smelled like old paper and secrets. Sarah moved slowly through the stacks, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Then she saw it. A leather-bound journal, hidden beneath a pile of Confederate uniforms. The cover was cracked and faded, but the name written on the front made her breath catch in her throat. Jabari Mansa. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the journal. The pages were yellowed with age, but the words were clear. They were written in careful English, each letter formed with precision and pain. My name is Jabari Mansa. I was born free in the Kingdom of Congo. I was a scholar, a teacher, a father. But in 1843, I was stolen from my home and brought to this land in chains. What they did to me, what they took from me, must never be forgotten. I write this so the truth will live, even if I do not. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She had never heard this name before, never seen it in any history book or museum display, but as she read, she understood why. Jabari Mansa had been no ordinary slave. He had been educated, intelligent, and defiant. He had organized secret schools for enslaved children. He had taught them to read and write, to remember their African names, to hold onto their dignity. He had documented everything: the cruelty, the violence, the names of the men who profited from human suffering. And according to his journal, he had hidden evidence. Documents that proved some of the most powerful families in Georgia had built their wealth on crimes too terrible to speak of. Families whose descendants still controlled the town, still sat on the town council, still ran the historical society. Sarah felt her heart pounding. She knew what she was holding. This was the truth they had tried to erase, the story they had buried in this basement for over 170 years. She carefully placed the journal in her cleaning cart, covering it with rags and spray bottles. Her mind raced as she finished her shift. She couldn't tell anyone, not yet, not until she understood what she had found. Over the next week, Sarah read every page of Jabari's journal. She read about his life in Congo, where he had been a teacher of history and languages. She read about the night raiders came to his village, how they burned his home and dragged him to the coast in chains. She read about the nightmare of the Middle Passage, the auction block in Charleston, and his sale to a plantation owner named Cornelius Whitmore. The Whitmore family still lived in Crawford County. They owned half the town. The current mayor, David Whitmore, was Cornelius's great-great-great-grandson. Jabari's journal described unspeakable cruelty, but it also described something else, a network of resistance. Enslaved people who kept records, who hid documents, who created a secret archive of the truth. And according to Jabari's final entries, this archive was hidden somewhere on the old Whitmore plantation. The plantation that was now the Crawford County Country Club. Sarah knew she should take the journal to the authorities, but who would believe her? She was just a custodian, an old black woman with no education, no power, no voice. And the people who needed to be exposed were the same people who ran the town. She made a decision. She would find the archive herself. The next Saturday, Sarah drove to the country club. It was members only, but she knew the service entrance. She had cleaned there before, years ago, when they needed extra help for weddings. She put on her uniform and walked in with confidence. No one questioned her. No one even looked at her. She made her way to the old plantation house, now used as the clubhouse. According to Jabari's journal, the archive was hidden beneath the original foundation, in a root cellar that had been sealed in 1865, right before the end of the Civil War. Sarah found the old kitchen, now renovated into a modern catering space, but she could see the outline of the original structure. She waited until the staff left for their break, then moved a heavy rack of supplies. There, beneath a false floor panel, was a wooden door. Her heart thundered as she pulled it open. Stone steps led down into darkness. Sarah took out her flashlight and descended into the past. The root cellar was exactly as Jabari had described, and there, in waterproof metal boxes, was the archive. Deeds showing stolen land, bills of sale for human beings, letters describing brutal punishments, photographs from the early days of photography showing horrors that made Sarah's stomach turn, and financial records, detailed accounts of how the Whitmore family and their associates had built a fortune on suffering. Sarah photographed everything with her phone. Her hands shook, but she worked methodically. She knew she might never get another chance. She was so focused on her work that she didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Sarah spun around. Richard Caldwell, the museum director, stood at the bottom of the steps. His face was red with anger. Behind him stood two men Sarah recognized, David Whitmore, the mayor, and his brother James, the chief of police. "You have no right to be here," Caldwell hissed. "You have no right to touch these things." Sarah straightened her back. For the first time in 27 years, she looked them directly in the eyes. "These things belong to history," she said quietly. "They belong to the truth." Mayor Whitmore stepped forward. His smile was cold. "Nobody's going to believe you, Sarah. You're a nobody, a cleaning woman. Who's going to listen to you?" "Everyone," Sarah said. "Everyone is going to listen." She held up her phone. "I've already sent everything to the National Archives, to the Smithsonian, to the New York Times. You can take my phone, but you can't stop the truth anymore." It was a lie. She hadn't sent anything yet, but she needed them to believe she had. The three men looked at each other. The silence in that root cellar felt like death itself. Then Police Chief James Whitmore reached for his gun. "I think," he said slowly, "we have a trespasser who became violent, a tragic situation. Nobody would question it." Sarah's blood ran cold. She understood. They were going to kill her, right here in this place where so many had suffered, and they would call it justified. She closed her eyes and thought of Jabari Mansa, of his courage, of his refusal to be erased. If she was going to die, she would die standing up. "Go ahead," she whispered, "but Jabari's story will live, and so will mine." James Whitmore raised his weapon. Sarah didn't move. She kept her eyes open this time. She wanted to see them. She wanted them to see her. The gunshot never came. Instead, there was a crash from above, shouting, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. All four of them froze. Then a voice called down the stairs, a woman's voice, strong and clear. "Crawford County Police, stand down. Federal agents are on site. Drop your weapon." James Whitmore's face went white. His gun clattered to the floor. Footsteps thundered down the stairs, but it wasn't the police. It was someone else. Someone Sarah had never seen before. A tall black woman in her late 40s, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes were hard as steel. She moved like a predator, like someone who had faced death and won. She looked at the three men with pure contempt. Then she looked at Sarah, and her expression softened. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "my name is Patricia Monroe. I'm here to help you." 48 hours earlier, Lieutenant Commander Patricia Trish Monroe had been sitting in her small apartment in Atlanta, staring at her phone. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Trish was 48 years old and looked like she could still run through walls. 25 years in the Navy, 12 as a SEAL, and the last 5 training elite combat units. She had dark skin, gray-streaked hair, and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. She had retired 6 months ago with full honors, 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, and more classified commendations than she could count. But retirement didn't feel like freedom. It felt like waiting to die. The call had come at 2 in the morning. "Commander Monroe," the voice was elderly, shaking. "My name is Sarah Henderson. I got your number from the Veterans Crisis Line. They said you help people who need someone who understands." Trish sat up straight. "I'm listening." "I found something," Sarah said. "Something about slavery, about my ancestors, about the truth, and now they're going to kill me for it." Most people would have hung up, would have thought it was paranoia or confusion, but Trish had learned to trust her instincts, and something in Sarah's voice rang true. "Tell me everything," Trish said. Sarah talked for an hour. She told Trish about the journal, about Jabari Mansa, about the archive hidden beneath the country club. She told her about the Whitmore family and their power over the town. She told her about the threats she had started receiving. Anonymous calls, a brick through her window, a note left on her car that said simply, "Stop." "Why are you telling me this?" Trish asked. "Why not go to the FBI?" Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because the FBI has an office in Crawford County, and the agent in charge plays golf with the mayor every Sunday. Because every lawyer in town depends on Whitmore money. Because I'm a 63-year-old black woman who cleans floors, and nobody listens to people like me." "I'm listening," Trish said. "I know," Sarah replied. "That's why I called. The crisis line told me you were different. They said you were someone who actually did something when people needed help. They said you couldn't stand injustice." Trish felt something wake up inside her, something she thought had died when she left the service. "Purpose? When are you going to the country club?" Trish asked. "Saturday afternoon. I work the evening shift there sometimes. It's my only chance to get into that root cellar." "Don't go alone." "I have to," Sarah said. "If anyone sees me with someone else, they'll know something is wrong. I have to do this myself." Trish understood. Some battles you had to fight alone, but that didn't mean you couldn't have backup. "Send me the address," Trish said. "And Sarah, I'll be there. They won't see me, but I'll be there." For the next 2 days, Trish did what she did best. She gathered intelligence. She used her military contacts to run background checks on the Whitmore family. She reached out to a historian friend at Emory University who specialized in African American history. She studied maps of Crawford County, satellite images of the country club, layouts of the old plantation house. What she found made her sick. The Whitmore family had been hiding the truth for generations, not just about slavery, but about what came after. Convict leasing programs that were slavery by another name. Land theft from black families during Reconstruction. Lynchings that were never investigated. A pattern of violence and theft that continued well into the 20th century. And they had used their wealth to bury it all. Trish also discovered something else. Sarah Henderson wasn't just a custodian. She was the great-great-great-granddaughter of a woman named Amara, a woman who had been enslaved on the Whitmore plantation, a woman who had worked directly with Jabari Mansa. Sarah was looking for her own history, her own blood. That made it personal. On Saturday afternoon, Trish drove to Crawford County. She parked half a mile from the country club and walked through the woods, moving silently through the trees. Old skills coming back like muscle memory. She positioned herself where she could see the service entrance. She watched Sarah arrive, watched her go inside. Trish checked her watch. She would give Sarah 30 minutes. If she didn't come out, Trish was going in. 20 minutes passed, then 25. At 28 minutes, Trish saw 3 men enter through the main entrance. She recognized them from her research: the mayor, the police chief, and the museum director. They were moving fast, moving with purpose. Trish's instincts screamed. She ran. She hit the service entrance at full speed, her shoulder slamming through the door. A kitchen worker shouted in surprise. Trish ignored him and followed the sound of voices. They led her to the old kitchen, to the open panel in the floor, to the stairs leading down. She heard the police chief's voice. Nobody would question it. Trish didn't hesitate. She grabbed a heavy metal tray from a serving cart and hurled it across the room. It crashed into a rack of dishes with a sound like an explosion. All eyes turned to her. "Crawford County Police, stand down," she shouted, using her command voice. The voice that had ordered men and women into combat, the voice that expected to be obeyed. "Federal agents are on site. Drop your weapon." It was a bluff. There were no federal agents, but these men didn't know that. The police chief's gun hit the floor. Trish descended the stairs slowly, her eyes never leaving the 3 men. When she reached the bottom, she looked at Sarah. "Ma'am," she said, "my name is Patricia Monroe. I'm here to help you." Sarah's eyes were wide with shock. "How did you?" "Later," Trish said. She turned to the 3 men. "You have a choice. You can let us walk out of here with those documents, or I can make a phone call to some friends at the Department of Defense who owe me favors. People who would be very interested in a police chief threatening an unarmed woman." "You're bluffing," Mayor Whitmore said, but his voice shook. Trish pulled out her phone. She didn't dial, she just held it up. "Try me." The silence stretched out like a wire about to snap. Finally, Richard Caldwell spoke. "Let them go. This isn't worth it." "Like hell," James Whitmore snarled. "Do you know what's in those documents? Do you know what this could do to us?" "I know exactly what it could do," Caldwell said quietly. "That's why we're letting them walk away. For now." Trish understood the threat. This wasn't over. They were buying time, planning their next move. But so was she. "Sarah," Trish said, "gather everything, we're leaving." Sarah quickly collected the documents, putting them back in their metal boxes. Her hands were steady now. Trish kept herself between Sarah and the 3 men, watching their every move. They climbed the stairs together, walked through the kitchen, out the service entrance, into the parking lot. It wasn't until they were in Trish's car, driving away, that Sarah finally spoke. "Why did you come?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Trish kept her eyes on the road. 25 years ago, I was a scared kid from Detroit who wanted to serve her country. The military gave me a chance when nobody else would. It made me strong, but it also showed me things. Things that made me realize our country has 2 histories, the one we tell and the one we hide. She glanced at Sarah. "You found the hidden history, the one they want to keep buried. That makes you the bravest person I've met in a long time." "I'm not brave," Sarah said. "I'm terrified." "Brave people are always terrified," Trish replied. "That's what makes them brave." They drove in silence for a while. Then Sarah asked the question Trish had been waiting for. "What do we do now?" Trish smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a soldier who had just found her mission. "Now," she said, "now we go to war." Trish drove them to a small motel 2 towns over. Not the kind of place anyone would look for them. She paid cash for 2 rooms and made Sarah promise to keep the door locked and the curtains closed. While Sarah rested, Trish sat in her own room with the metal boxes spread across the bed. She carefully photographed every document, every letter, every photograph. She uploaded everything to 3 different secure cloud servers. If something happened to them, if the documents were destroyed, the truth would still survive. The archive was more than Trish had imagined. Jabari Mansa's personal papers told the story of a brilliant man destroyed by evil, but they also told the story of resistance, of dignity in the face of horror, of people who refused to be broken. There were letters written in secret, teaching materials hidden in the quarters. A map showing the locations of other hidden archives throughout the South. Jabari hadn't worked alone. He had been part of a network, dozens of educated enslaved people who had created a shadow history, documentation that their enslavers never knew existed. One document in particular caught Trish's attention. It was a ledger from 1858. It showed payments made by Cornelius Whitmore to a ship captain named Jonathan Pierce. The amounts were staggering, and the notation beside each payment was chilling: special cargo from West Africa. The slave trade had been illegal in America since 1808, but according to this ledger, Cornelius Whitmore had been smuggling enslaved people into Georgia for decades after the ban. And he hadn't done it alone. The ledger listed 6 other prominent families who had participated in the illegal trade. Families whose descendants still controlled Georgia politics. Trish felt her anger building. This wasn't just history. This was a crime that had never been punished, wealth that had been stolen and passed down through generations, power built on suffering. And they had gotten away with it. Until now. There was a soft knock on the door between the 2 rooms. Trish opened it to find Sarah standing there, looking small and exhausted. "I can't sleep," Sarah said. "Come in," Trish replied. "I want to show you something." She pulled out one particular document, a birth record from 1844. It showed a baby girl born to a woman named Amara. The baby's name was listed as Girl, property of C. Whitmore. Sarah stared at the document. Tears rolled down her face. "My great-great-great-grandmother," she whispered. "Her name was Amara. That's all I ever knew. My grandmother told me stories, but there were no records. Nothing to prove she existed, nothing to prove any of them existed." "Well, now there is," Trish said gently, "and there's more." She showed Sarah another document, a letter written by Jabari Mansa to Amara, teaching her how to read, encouraging her to be strong, promising her that freedom would come, even if they didn't live to see it. "He knew her," Sarah breathed. "Jabari knew my ancestor." "More than that," Trish said. She pulled out a final document, a note in Jabari's handwriting. "Amara is the strongest among us. She keeps the light alive. She remembers. She teaches her daughter to remember. Through her, the truth will survive." Sarah broke down then, deep, wrenching sobs. Trish put her arm around the older woman and let her cry. Sometimes that was all you could do. Let the pain out. Let it be witnessed. When Sarah finally quieted, she looked at Trish with red eyes. "They tried to erase us," she said. "They tried to make it like we never existed, like we were nothing, but we kept the memories. We passed down the stories, generation after generation. My grandmother told me about Amara. She told me to never forget, and I didn't." "And now you found the proof," Trish said. "Now the whole world will know." "Will they?" Sarah asked. "The Whitmores have power, money, connections. What do we have?" Trish thought about that, about all the times in her military career when she had been outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that seemed unbeatable, and about how she had won anyway. "We have the truth," she said, "and we have each other. That's more than they think." The next morning, Trish made her first call to Dr. Marcus Chen, a historian at Emory University who specialized in African American history and the illegal slave trade. She had worked with him before on a documentary about black soldiers in World War II. "Trish," he said warmly, "it's been too long. What can I do for you?" "I need you to authenticate some documents," Trish said, "and I need you to understand that people are going to try to stop you." There was a pause, then, "Tell me more." She explained everything. When she was done, Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment. Send me the images, he finally said. If these documents are real, this is the biggest historical find in decades. This changes everything we know about the post-ban slave trade in Georgia. They're real, Trish said. I'm looking at them right now. Then we need to move fast, Dr. Chen said. The families you're talking about won't let this go public without a fight. We need to get these documents to multiple institutions simultaneously. The Smithsonian, the National Archives, major universities. Make it impossible to suppress. How long do you need? Trish asked. Give me 48 hours to verify authenticity. Then we go public. Trish's second call was to someone she had never expected to speak to again. Special Agent Victoria Cross, FBI. They had worked together on a human trafficking case 3 years ago. It hadn't gone well. They had disagreed on tactics, on ethics, on what justice actually meant. But Vicky Cross was honest, and she hated corruption more than she hated anything else in the world. Monroe, Cross said when she answered, this better be good. I'm in the middle of something. It's better than good, Trish said. It's a case that's going to make your career and tear apart some very powerful people. She heard Cross sit up straighter. I'm listening. Trish laid it out. The documents, the Whitmore family, the police chief who had pulled a gun on an unarmed woman, the conspiracy to hide historical crimes. When she finished, Cross was quiet. Then, you have proof of all this. I have photographs of original documents. I have the testimony of an eyewitness. And I have 3 men on camera threatening to commit murder. You recorded it. I always record everything, Trish lied smoothly. She hadn't, but she needed Cross to believe the evidence was ironclad. Send me everything you have, Cross said. And Trish, watch your back. If the Whitmores have the local police in their pocket, they won't hesitate to use them. I know, Trish said. That's why I called you. The third call was the hardest. To her old commanding officer, Admiral James Richardson. He had been her mentor, her protector, her friend. He had also made it clear when she retired that he expected her to stay out of trouble. This was definitely trouble. Commander Monroe, he said when he answered. His voice was formal, controlled. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need a favor, sir. Somehow I knew this wasn't a social call. Trish took a deep breath. I need protection for a civilian witness, someone who uncovered evidence of historical crimes committed by powerful people, someone who nearly got killed for it. Trish, the Admiral said with a sigh, tell me you didn't insert yourself into a civilian matter. I can't tell you that, sir. Damn it, there was a long pause. Tell me everything from the beginning. She did, and as she talked, she heard the Admiral's breathing change, heard his anger building. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that a decorated veteran was threatened with death for uncovering historical truth? Yes, sir. Sarah Henderson. She's not a veteran herself, but she's the descendant of enslaved people who created this archive. And now her life is in danger because she found it. Where is she now? With me, safe for the moment. Keep her that way, the Admiral ordered. I'm making some calls. I have friends in the Georgia State Police who aren't corrupt, and I know a federal judge who owes me. We're going to put so much legal protection around you too that the Whitmores won't dare touch you. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, he said grimly. This is going to get ugly. People with that kind of power don't go down quietly. I know, sir, but it's the right thing to do. I trained you well, the Admiral said, and Trish could hear the pride in his voice. Keep me updated. Every 6 hours. If I don't hear from you, I'm sending in the Marines. Trish hung up and looked at Sarah, who had been listening to every call. We have historians, federal agents, and the United States Navy on our side, Trish said. Now we wait. For what? Sarah asked. For them to make their move, Trish replied. Because they will. People like the Whitmores always do, and when they do, we'll be ready. They came at midnight. Trish heard the vehicles before she saw them. 3 SUVs pulling into the motel parking lot, their headlights off. She was already awake, sitting in the dark by the window. She had learned in combat to trust her instincts, and her instincts had been screaming all evening. She moved quickly to the door connecting her room to Sarah's, opened it silently. "Sarah," she whispered, "get up, we need to move now." Sarah sat up immediately, already dressed. Trish had told her to sleep in her clothes, to be ready. They grabbed the metal boxes and slipped out the back window of Sarah's room. Trish had scouted the exit routes when they first arrived. Another lesson from the military. Always have an escape plan. They moved through the darkness behind the motel, heading for Trish's car parked 2 blocks away in a grocery store lot. They were 50 yards away when the motel room doors crashed open behind them. Flashlights swept the darkness. Men shouted. "Run," Trish said. They ran. Sarah was slower, her 63-year-old legs protesting, but she kept moving, kept fighting. Trish stayed beside her, carrying the metal boxes, watching their backs. They reached the car. Trish threw the boxes in the back seat and got Sarah into the passenger side. The engine roared to life. Behind them, the SUVs peeled out of the motel parking lot. The chase was on. Trish drove like she had in hostile territory overseas. Fast, precise, unpredictable. She took side streets, cut through parking lots, doubled back on her route. But the SUVs stayed with them. Whoever was driving knew what they were doing. "Call 911, Trish told Sarah. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed. "Hello, we're being chased by." She stopped, listened. Her face went pale. "What?" Trish demanded. "They said there's no chase," Sarah whispered. "They said if I call again, they'll arrest me for making a false report." The local police were in on it. Of course they were. Trish made a decision. She couldn't outrun them forever, and she couldn't let them catch Sarah, which meant she needed to change the game. She grabbed her own phone and called Special Agent Victoria Cross. "This better be important," Cross answered, her voice thick with sleep. "They're trying to kill us," Trish said flatly. "Right now, 3 vehicles in pursuit. Local police won't help. I need federal intervention. Now." She heard Cross snap awake, heard the rustle of movement, the click of a keyboard. "What's your location?" Trish rattled off the highway number and mile marker, heading north on Route 27. "Stay on the line," Cross ordered. "I'm contacting the Georgia State Police right now. They're not under Whitmore control. They can have units to you in 8 minutes. "We might not have 8 minutes. "Then make them count, Commander." The SUVs were getting closer. Trish could see men leaning out the windows. She saw the glint of weapons. These weren't cops. These were private security, hired guns. One of them fired. The bullet went wide, but the message was clear. "They're shooting at us," Trish told Cross. "I heard," Cross said. "State police are rolling, 6 minutes out. Can you stay ahead of them?" Trish looked at the road ahead, at the speedometer reading 95 miles per hour, at Sarah gripping the door handle, her face set with determination. "Yes," Trish said, "I can." She pushed the car harder. The engine screamed. The world became a blur of lights and darkness, but the SUVs stayed with them, getting closer, getting bolder. Another shot. This one hit the rear bumper. "They're going to shoot out our tires," Sarah said. Her voice was calm, too calm, the calm of someone who had accepted what was coming. "No," Trish said, "they're not." She saw what she was looking for, a construction zone. Orange barrels narrowing the highway down to 1 lane, a concrete barrier on one side. She waited until the last possible second. Then she slammed on the brakes. The car went into a controlled skid. Trish had done this maneuver 100 times in tactical driving courses. She let the car slide sideways, using the momentum to spin them around. The metal boxes in the back seat crashed against the door but held. The 3 SUVs weren't expecting it. They tried to brake, but they were going too fast. The first one smashed into the concrete barrier. The second one swerved and hit the first. The third one managed to stop, but it was facing the wrong direction. Its front end crumpled. Trish completed the spin and gunned the engine, heading back the way they had come. In the rearview mirror, she saw men climbing out of the wrecked vehicles, saw them raising their weapons. But then she saw something else, red and blue lights, lots of them, coming from both directions. The Georgia State Police had arrived. Trish pulled over and put her hands on the wheel. Sarah did the same. They sat in silence as state troopers swarmed the scene, weapons drawn, ordering the men from the SUVs to the ground. A female trooper approached their car, flashlight in hand. "Patricia Monroe?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Sergeant Linda Hayes. Agent Cross sent us. Are you and Mrs. Henderson injured?" "No, ma'am, but those men tried to kill us." "We saw," Sergeant Hayes said grimly. "We have dashcam footage of them firing at your vehicle. They're going to prison for a long time." "They're just hired muscle," Trish said. "The people who sent them are still out there." "Not for long," Hayes replied. She lowered her voice. "Agent Cross has been busy. She woke up a federal judge, got emergency warrants for the mayor, the police chief, and 3 others. FBI is hitting their homes right now." Sarah started to cry, not from fear this time, from relief. It was over, the running was over. But the real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Sarah and Trish sat in the FBI field office in Atlanta. Special Agent Cross sat across from them, looking exhausted but satisfied. "We have them," she said. "The mayor tried to run. We caught him at the airport with 2 suitcases full of cash and a passport in a fake name. The police chief is singing like a canary, trying to cut a deal. And the men who chased you last night, they're all hired security from a company owned by James Whitmore's brother-in-law. This just keeps getting bigger." "What about the documents?" Sarah asked. Cross smiled. "Dr. Chen verified them this morning. They're authentic, every single one. The Smithsonian is sending a team to secure them today, and the story is already breaking. The Washington Post has it on the front page. The New York Times is running a full investigation. This is national news." "Good," Trish said. "The Whitmores can't bury this now." "No," Cross agreed. "They can't, but they're going to try to discredit you, both of you. They've already got lawyers calling you opportunists, saying Sarah stole the documents, saying you're both mentally unstable." "Let them try," Sarah said quietly. "The truth is in those documents, in Jabari's words, in the records. They can say whatever they want about me, but they can't change what's written in those pages." Cross nodded. "You're right, and you're not alone. The NAACP is backing you. The National Museum of African American History and Culture is backing you. You've got historians, civil rights leaders, and half of Congress making statements in support." She leaned forward. "But I need to be honest with you. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. There will be depositions, testimonies, probably a trial. Your lives are going to be under a microscope. People are going to dig into everything you've ever done. Are you ready for that?" Trish and Sarah looked at each other. Then Sarah spoke. "I've been invisible my whole life," she said. "People have walked past me for 63 years without seeing me, without knowing my name, without caring about my story. But my ancestors were invisible too, erased from history, treated like they didn't matter, like they weren't human." Her voice grew stronger. "I'm ready to be visible now. I'm ready to let them look at me, let them judge me. Because if that's what it takes for Jabari's story to be told, if that's what it takes for Amara to be remembered, then I'll stand in front of the whole world." "So will I," Trish added. "I didn't spend 25 years defending this country just to watch powerful people bury the truth. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Cross smiled. "Then let's make history." 6 months later, Sarah Henderson stood in the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. She was wearing a new dress, bought special for the occasion. Her hair was done. Her head was high. The exhibit was called The Archive of Resistance, Jabari Mansa and the Hidden History of American Slavery. It took up an entire wing of the museum. Sarah walked slowly through the displays, reading the words she had first seen in that basement storage room. But now they were behind glass, preserved forever, protected, honored. There were photographs of the original documents, translations of letters written in secret codes, interactive displays showing the network of educated enslaved people who had created archives throughout the South, maps showing where other hidden collections might still be waiting to be discovered. And at the center of it all was Jabari Mansa's journal. Sarah stopped in front of it. Read the words again. My name is Jabari Mansa. I was born free in the Kingdom of Congo. I was a scholar, a teacher, a father. Beside the journal was something new, something Sarah had helped create, a family tree, starting with Jabari Mansa, showing the people he taught, the children who learned to read in secret, the generations who kept the memory alive. And there at the bottom was Sarah's own name. Sarah Henderson, great-great-great-granddaughter of Amara, custodian, truth-teller. Hero. It's beautiful, a voice said beside her. Sarah turned to find Trish standing there, wearing her dress uniform. She had been invited to speak at the opening ceremony, to tell the story of how the archive was discovered, how it was protected. It's more than beautiful, Sarah said. It's real, it's permanent. They can't erase it now. No, Trish agreed, they can't. The trial had been brutal, just as Agent Cross had warned. The Whitmores had fought with everything they had, expensive lawyers, character assassination, attempts to have the documents ruled inadmissible. But the truth was stronger. Mayor David Whitmore was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit murder. Police Chief James Whitmore got 8 years. The men who had chased Sarah and Trish were serving even longer sentences. The museum director, Richard Caldwell, had turned state's evidence. He testified about decades of deliberately hiding historical evidence, about documents destroyed, about archives buried, about a systematic effort to erase the truth about slavery and its aftermath. His testimony had broken the case wide open. But more importantly, it had led to other discoveries, other hidden archives, other stories that needed to be told. The exhibit had already traveled to 5 major cities. Millions of people had seen it. Millions more would see it. Teachers were creating lesson plans around it. Scholars were writing papers. Filmmakers were making documentaries. Jabari Mansa's voice was finally being heard. Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see a young black girl, maybe 10 years old, standing with her grandmother. "Are you Sarah Henderson?" the girl asked shyly. "I am," Sarah said. "My teacher told us about you. She said you were brave. She said you found the truth when everyone said it was lost." Sarah knelt down so she was eye level with the girl. "I wasn't brave," she said gently. "I was scared, but I did it anyway, and do you know why?" The girl shook her head. "Because our ancestors were brave," Sarah said. "People like Jabari Mansa, people like Amara. They lived through terrible things. They suffered in ways we can't imagine, but they never stopped fighting, never stopped trying to keep the truth alive. And they did it so that one day people like you and me could stand here, could be free, could tell their stories." The girl's eyes were wide. "Will you tell me about Jabari Mansa?" Sarah smiled. "I would be honored." She spent the next 20 minutes talking to the girl and her grandmother, telling them about the journal, about the secret schools, about the courage it took to resist, to remember, to refuse to be erased. When they left, the grandmother had tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving us back our history. As the day went on, more people approached Sarah. Some were descendants of enslaved people, looking for connections to their own ancestors. Some were historians, wanting to learn more. Some were just people who had been moved by the story. Sarah talked to all of them, shared what she knew, listened to their stories. She wasn't invisible anymore. That evening there was a formal ceremony. The director of the museum spoke. Dr. Marcus Chen spoke. Special Agent Victoria Cross spoke. Admiral Richardson spoke. And then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the podium slowly. Her hands shook as she gripped the sides. She looked out at the crowd, hundreds of faces, all looking at her, all waiting to hear what she had to say. For a moment she froze. Who was she to speak? She was just a custodian, just an old woman who had stumbled onto something bigger than herself. But then she saw Trish in the front row, Trish who had risked everything to protect her, who had turned a frightened phone call into a mission, who had taught her what real courage looked like. Trish nodded, a small gesture, but it was enough. Sarah took a breath and began to speak. "My name is Sarah Henderson," she said. Her voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger with each word. "I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of a woman named Amara. She was enslaved on the Whitmore plantation in Crawford County, Georgia. She learned to read in secret, taught by a man named Jabari Mansa. She taught her daughter. Her daughter taught her daughter, and so on down through the generations until the knowledge came to me." Sarah paused. "My whole life I was taught to be quiet, to be invisible, to not make trouble. I cleaned floors in the same museum that refused to tell my ancestors' stories. I walked past displays celebrating the people who enslaved my family, and I said nothing, because I thought I had no power, I thought I had no voice. But I was wrong." Her voice rang out now, strong and clear. "Every one of us has power. Every one of us has a voice. And when we use it to speak the truth, no amount of money or influence can silence us. The people who tried to erase Jabari Mansa's story learned that. The people who tried to stop me learned that. The truth is stronger than lies. Justice is stronger than corruption. And memory is stronger than erasure." Sarah looked directly at the camera that was recording her speech. She knew it would be seen by millions, that her words would travel far beyond this room. "If you're watching this and you think you don't matter," she said, "if you think your voice is too small, your power too weak, your story too ordinary to make a difference, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. You are the descendants of people who survived the unsurvivable, who fought when fighting seemed impossible, who kept the truth alive even when the whole world tried to bury it. You matter, your story matters, and if you speak your truth, the world will listen." The applause started before she finished. It grew and grew until the whole room was standing, clapping, some people crying. Sarah stood at the podium, tears running down her face, and for the first time in her life she felt truly seen. Afterward, at the reception, Sarah found herself surrounded by people, but she was looking for one person in particular. She found Trish on the balcony, looking out over the city. Trying to escape, Sarah asked with a smile. "Just taking a breath," Trish replied. "It's been a long day. It's been a long 6 months." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah spoke again. "I never thanked you properly," she said, "for everything you did. You saved my life. You believed me when no one else did." Trish shook her head. "You saved your own life. I just provided backup." "You provided more than that," Sarah said firmly. "You gave me courage. You showed me what it means to stand up, to fight, to refuse to back down." "You already had that courage," Trish said. "You just didn't know it yet." Sarah smiled. "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out alone." "You'll never be alone again," Trish promised. "This story, this movement, it's just beginning. There are more archives out there, more hidden histories, more truths waiting to be discovered, and we're going to find them together." "Together," Sarah echoed. They looked out over the city, over the monuments and museums, over the capital of a country that was finally beginning to reckon with its past. Somewhere out there, other people were making the same choice Sarah had made, to speak up, to search for truth, to refuse to let history be erased. And somewhere in the darkness of history, Jabari Mansa's spirit was finally at rest. His story had been told, his name had been remembered, his truth had survived. And it would live forever. 3 weeks later, Sarah received a letter. It was from a woman in South Carolina named Patricia Jameson. She had seen the exhibit, heard Sarah's speech, and she had something to share. Her grandmother had told her stories about a hidden archive, documents buried beneath an old church, records kept by enslaved people who wanted the world to know what had really happened. Patricia wanted to know if Sarah would help her find it. Sarah looked at the letter, then she picked up her phone and called Trish. "How do you feel about South Carolina?" she asked. Trish laughed. "When do we leave?" Because the work wasn't done. The truth was still being uncovered. The stories were still being told. And Sarah Henderson, the woman who had been invisible for 63 years, was leading the way. She had found her voice. She had found her purpose. She had found her power. And she was never going to be silent again. The forgotten would be remembered. The erased would be restored. The truth would live forever.